If you met a beggar who would probably get some money from begging other people on your way to get something to eat with your last dime, and he pleaded with you to give him the money with you so that he wouldn't die of starvation, would you give it to him knowing that you were also starving? Amara had always been very kind. Some people thought that she was generous to a fault and sometimes warned her to be careful, but Amara never listened to any of them. She simply had a kind heart, and even if she wanted to stop, she wouldn't be able to. Amara lived an average life and minded her own business. She was also very hardworking and dedicated to what she was doing. She had a job that she loved and appreciated. She had a loving boyfriend and, of course, had a good amount of money saved in her savings account. To Amara, life was good. She wasn't like other people who wanted the world. As long as Amara could keep a roof over her head, have food in her stomach, keep some change in her purse for beggars on the way or little children who weren't in school, and meet her basic needs, she was satisfied. Amara was not greedy. Even if she was able to have one meal a day, she would be very grateful for it. Contentment was her watchword. One day, Amara ran into an old secondary school classmate, John Paul. They reacquainted themselves, and John Paul told Amara that he was into real estate development, and currently they were selling off lands in the state at affordable prices. Even though it was the first time seeing each other after so many years, John Paul was able to talk extensively and convincingly about his business. Amara knew that getting land was like saving money to buy a private jet. It was very expensive. She also knew that it was a very good investment. And so, when John Paul said all those things to her, she believed him. He even went as far as listing out where their plots of lands were located, and they were obviously places that were fast developing. If you buy the land at such an affordable amount, you are going to resell it at a higher price in the next 2 years because people will be dying to get houses in those areas, John Paul told Amara. At first, Amara was worried about the cost of the land, not that she had the money anyway, but simply because she knew how expensive lands were. However, John Paul, the sweet talker, had the right words for Amara. He explained to Amara that his company was able to secure some land from the governor of the state on merit, and so they were selling them out at an affordable price. To further convince Amara, he showed her the company's website and also gave her the company's address, just in case Amara wanted to confirm things for herself. However, John Paul also made Amara understand that there wasn't much time. A lot of people were aware of how much they were giving out the lands, and they also wanted to seize the opportunity as fast as they could. If Amara took time to think about it, she might lose a golden opportunity forever. There and then, Amara had to think about it and come up with a decision. She was mature enough to know the benefit of what John Paul was saying to her. Also, John Paul was her secondary school classmate, and she could still recall how intelligent he was. He was even a school prefect who was well respected by teachers and students alike. So she shouldn't have any worries, right? Amara thought about the money that she had in her savings account. The amount for the land that John Paul told her about was the exact amount in her savings account. The money there was for her house rent and, of course, emergencies when they arose. But then again, Amara had a job and she could always start saving again. In a few years to come, all she had to do was resell the land in millions and get triple of what she was paying for it. Convinced now, Amara transferred the money to John Paul, and he promised that the very next day he would bring the land papers to her. She needn't worry about it. Also, she could send her proof of payment to the company's website so that they would know that she was one of their buyers. That way, her land papers would be secured. All of that Amara did before she parted ways with John Paul. But 2 days later, Amara didn't hear from him or see him. He didn't show up at her house as promised. His number stopped going through. Amara was worried. She checked the website, but to her surprise, it wasn't working any longer. She couldn't even log in anymore. Disturbed, Amara went to the address that John Paul gave her as the address of his company, but it turned out that the address was a local poultry. And that was when it dawned on Amara that she had been scammed in broad daylight. She trusted an old secondary school classmate whom she hadn't seen for years, thinking that he was still the same person that she knew back then in school, and in a couple of hours, he was able to fool her and take all her savings away from her effortlessly. Unfortunately, there was no way to reach John Paul. He had vanished into thin air with all of Amara's hard-earned saved money. As painful as it was, Amara didn't rain curses on John Paul. She merely told herself that since she was working, she would be able to pay back what he stole from her in a couple of months. But Amara had no idea that the universe had something else in store for her coming the very next morning. Like, drop a comment and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. The next morning, Amara arrived at the office where she worked, but she noticed that the atmosphere wasn't as bright as she had always known it. "What is going on?" Amara asked her colleagues. They told her that the managing director wanted to see her the moment she got to the office. Amara thought that she would have the opportunity to tell her colleagues what happened to her 3 days ago, as she had already told herself that she would tell her boyfriend all about it after work today. Amara planned to go to her boyfriend's house right after the close of work. They hadn't really spoken in about 3 days, but Amara wasn't worried because it was like that with him sometimes, as he got very busy from time to time. Anyway, Amara would have to tell her colleagues her story when she was done meeting with the managing director. Amara left them and went to see him. He welcomed her into his office and offered her a seat, which Amara took. Then he started with praising Amara for her years of hard work and dedication in the company. "We see all the effort you put in to ensure that everything runs smoothly here. Without you, the company wouldn't have been able to achieve some of the things they have achieved since we hired you. You are one staff that is rare. We have never seen or heard you grumbling over a task, and you give it your very best all the time," he told Amara extensively. The words came out of his mouth as though he had rehearsed them, and Amara smiled and told him, "Thank you." Usually, when praises like this were heaped on a staff member, it was always meant that the person was due for a promotion or a raise. Quite frankly, Amara wasn't looking forward to either of them. Again, she was simply doing her best because that was exactly what she knew how to do. Whatever that was entrusted into Amara's hands always got the best from her. But then again, Amara began to think that perhaps it was God rewarding her for what John Paul did to her. He probably wanted to bless Amara with a promotion or a raise so that she would be able to save back the money she so carelessly gave to John Paul because she easily trusted people. And so Amara was happy about it. But she was wrong. After all the praises, the managing director told Amara that they were letting her go. Amara was surprised and confused at the same time. Letting her go? Why? What did she do? Amara asked all the questions at once. This wasn't something that she was expecting at all. Just as the managing director said a few minutes ago, Amara was a very good employee. She never did anything that warranted a query or got on the nerves of anyone. So why was she being fired? The managing director told Amara that it wasn't as though she had done something wrong, but that they were cutting down on their staff members from each branch in the country, and unfortunately, her name was among those being fired. This made Amara more shocked. Even if they wanted to fire anyone, why should it be her? Not that Amara wished for anyone to lose their jobs, but she could point out quite a number of staff members who weren't half as hardworking and dedicated the way she was, but they didn't fire them. The one person they thought to fire was her. "Is this a prank?" Amara asked the managing director, hoping that he would throw his head back and laugh it off, saying that he had merely wanted to pull her legs. But that didn't happen. On the contrary, he stared at Amara and told her that it wasn't a prank. Amara was being fired with immediate effect. The man had the temerity to apologize for firing Amara out of the blue. Maybe it would have been a soft blow if they were laying her off with some sort of consolation, but they weren't. The way they hired her years ago was the same way they were letting her go, with absolutely nothing. When Amara was able to get out of her shock, she pleaded with the managing director. Perhaps he could reconsider or even give her the grace of working for 6 months before firing her. "I just lost all my money to a scammer. If you fire me now, without a dime, I'm going to be broke at this very moment, and I won't have something to hold on to before I get another job," Amara pleaded, her eyes filled with tears. But the managing director didn't budge. According to him, his hands were tied and there was nothing he could do, as the order came from powers above. Like a drenched rodent, Amara walked out of his office. Her colleagues already sensed what was about to happen, which was exactly why the atmosphere had been that way when she came in. They sympathized with Amara, but what would their sympathies do? Amara needed a job now more than ever before. How was it possible that she got scammed 3 days ago and right now she was being laid off? Was it a dream? A part of Amara still hoped that the managing director would come out of his office and tell Amara that he was joking, but he didn't. "Don't worry, Amara. You are a very kind and hardworking person. I am certain that you will find another job soon enough, or maybe even a better one. We are going to miss you dearly, Amara. I really wish you didn't have to go. You were such a light amongst us. You are lucky you have a boyfriend who loves you. He is going to support you financially before you get a new job." Those were the parting words of Amara's colleagues as she dragged her feet out of the office. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting, educative, and entertaining stories. Amara thought that she would be crying already, but she was still too dazed to even wrap her head around what was happening to her, to even think of shedding tears. She had heard that people faced a series of setbacks all at once, but Amara had always thought that they were exaggerating. She thought it wasn't real. The universe couldn't hate one person so much that it would allow a lot of bad things to happen to him or her all at once. But what Amara didn't know was that she had more of it coming. Well, she did say that she would visit her boyfriend in the evening after work to tell him what happened, so she made her way to his apartment. I might as well go there now, at least, and now have two horrible stories to tell him, Amara said to herself. She could already picture how he would react. He would tell her how sorry he was that this was happening to her, and then he would prepare something delicious to calm her mood. He was a great cook. Then they would talk and laugh, and he would try to cheer Amara up. He would even persuade Amara to spend the night at his apartment so that she would not have to deal with this all by herself or spend the entire night in thoughts in her house. Then, later at night, he might get ice cream for her. In the morning, when Amara would have to return to her apartment, he would give her some money for her upkeep so that she would get whatever she wanted, even though she didn't want anything at the moment. Amara found herself smiling as she allowed the imaginations to overrule her. What she saw when she got to her boyfriend's apartment left Amara more shattered than she had ever been. Her boyfriend was absent, which Amara expected because it was still morning and he ought to be at work. But fortunately for her, she did have the key to his apartment, which he gave her a while back, and she had it with her. Just like other times, Amara opened the door with the key and entered his apartment, ready to get some rest before he would return. But Amara was surprised to see his boxes in the living room. It was obvious that he was traveling. Amara had no idea that he was traveling. Again, they hadn't kept in touch for some days now. But he had never traveled without sending her a message just to inform her about his trip. Amara was still wondering about it when something caught her eyes. A wedding invitation card. It poked out of the part of the box that wasn't properly zipped. Amara didn't think much of it, but curiosity made her draw it out of the box to take a look. Maybe it was the reason her boyfriend was traveling. Indeed, it was the reason, but Amara staggered in shock when she saw that the wedding invitation belonged to her boyfriend. He was getting married to someone else. At first, Amara wasn't sure she understood what she was seeing. It couldn't be possible, right? But the names were clear and bold. How could he do this to her? Was it why he hadn't been communicating with her in the last couple of days? All the while, Amara thought he was busy. Of course, he was busy planning his own wedding to someone else. It was at that moment that Amara's boyfriend walked into his apartment in a hurry. But he stopped in shock when he saw Amara. He obviously wasn't expecting her. He could also see that the invitation card was in her hand, which meant that she had seen what he was hiding from her. Amara demanded an explanation, and eventually, he gave her one. Amara's boyfriend looked at her and told her that the reason he was going for someone else was because Amara was too kind and that she wasn't ambitious enough. He wanted someone who wasn't comfortable with the little they had. He wanted someone who was hungry for more. But Amara wasn't that kind of person, and he didn't want to end up with her. Also, he complained about Amara being too kind. She always gave money to beggars on the street and children with poor parents who worked on the street and couldn't afford to be in school. According to Amara's boyfriend, he was always embarrassed each time he saw her doing that. He wanted to tell Amara to stop, but he didn't know how to do it, so he simply decided that he didn't want to be with her long term. Amara had her mouth open in utter shock for some minutes. Where were these things coming from? For a long time, they had been together, and Amara was convinced that he loved her completely. Even her colleagues and neighbors knew about the love that they shared, so she couldn't understand where all that was coming from. Amara would never have imagined that he would do this to her because she never saw it coming. Begging him would be pointless because he already made his choice. To even think that he had been planning to marry someone else for months, and Amara never suspected anything. If she hadn't come when she did, he would have traveled without her knowledge. He merely stepped out to get a cab that would take him to the airport. Amara was more hurt because he was willing to hide the fact that he was marrying someone else away from her. Dejectedly, she returned his key and found her way back to her apartment. On the way, Amara kept replaying everything that had happened to her. First, it was her money, and then her job, and now her boyfriend. Amara couldn't shed a tear until she was in the privacy of her apartment, and then she let out the floodgates of pain. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. The pain ate very deep, so much that Amara stayed up all night crying, and during the day, she was so dejected that she locked herself in and cried some more. It felt as though her life was over. What else was she living for? How would she be able to pick herself back up in this state? She practically didn't have anything that was worth anything to her anymore. In less than 3 days, Amara experienced the worst tragedies that could befall anyone. But by the end of the week, Amara couldn't find more tears, and that was because she was starving. Amara checked her handbags and purses, but unfortunately, she found not a single naira note. The one person she had thought that for once she would rely on him to make her feel better and support her for the meantime had gone right ahead and married someone else. Who would she turn to? Somehow, and in the midst of this, Amara had no money. How she went completely broke was beyond her. But there was nothing that she could do. The next day, luck shined on Amara. One pair of her socks fell under the bed, and she got a broom to sweep it out. But much to her joy, Amara found a 1,000 naira note that had fallen underneath her bed months ago. She never knew because months ago she wasn't heartbroken, jobless, and penniless. Happily, Amara took the money and hurried out of the house to get herself something to eat. She had no idea where the next meal would come from, but what was most important at the moment was the fact that Amara would put food into her empty and rumbling stomach. However, a few feet away from her house, Amara ran into a dirty beggar. He pleaded with Amara to help him with the money in her hand to buy food because he hadn't eaten in days. He had met so many people, but no one even looked at his direction or wanted to help him. Amara's heart went out to him immediately, so much so that she forgot that she also hadn't eaten for days and her stomach was rumbling. Amara found herself telling him about her predicament, not because she wanted help from him, but because since everything that happened to her, she hadn't been able to tell anyone. When she was done, she decided to give the dirty beggar the money. Amara remembered her ex-boyfriend's words about her being too kind and generous to beggars, but she almost didn't give him the money. However, she changed her mind. The world would be a better place if everyone was kind, and regardless of what Amara had been through in the last 1 week, she would not allow anything or anyone stop her from spreading kindness and love. So, Amara gave him the money and went her way. Amara couldn't go back to her house because if she did, she might die of starvation. Now that she was done crying, she needed to find a temporary solution to her problem. The first person she saw needed someone to run errands, and Amara volunteered to do it. The money she was paid after that wasn't worth much, but it enabled her to get some food in her stomach. Amara decided that until she got a new job, she would be running errands for people, just to be able to fill her stomach with food and nothing more. One day, very early in the morning, as Amara was about to set out for her temporary job, a man showed up in front of her door with an envelope. In it was a letter of employment in the biggest oil and gas company in the country, which came with a mansion and a fancy car. Amara stared at the letter for some minutes in confusion. Then, she asked the man who had brought the letter if he knew what he was sent to do, even though it was her full name and address that were written on it. He nodded and told Amara that he was specifically directed to her. Amara shook her head and gave him back the letter and sent him on his way. She insisted that it didn't belong to her. First of all, she never applied to any oil and gas company, not to mention the biggest in the entire country. And secondly, she had no experience in the oil and gas sector. Maybe it belonged to someone else who bore the same name as she. And Amara would never be so greedy to take what belonged to someone else. A few days later, a young and handsome CEO showed up in a convoy. He introduced himself as Dixon and the CEO of the oil and gas company whose employment Amara had turned down. Dixon then went on to remind Amara of the dirty beggar she had given her last dime to. Amara gasped in shock when she realized that he was the one. She would never have been able to recognize him. Dixon told Amara that he had also been dealt a bad blow in life. He was betrayed by the friends he trusted, and after a setup that went wrong, he found himself in this community, alive but helpless. Amara was the only person who took pity on him, so he had returned to pay her back for her kindness. Standing in front of Amara was the richest man in the entire country. Dixon also confessed to Amara that after their encounter, he hadn't stopped thinking about her and that her kindness had endeared him to her. He had met a lot of people, but none were like Amara, who did things for people without expecting anything in return. Right there and then, Amara's life had changed completely, and the very thing that her ex-boyfriend left her for was what brought good luck in her life. Please subscribe to this channel to get more interesting and entertaining stories.